Before we get into today's video, I'm pleased to announce that my new merch store is live. I've brought back popular designs and items like my Mando shirts, mega mugs, jibber jabber tees, and so much more. You can find the link to it in the description down below. Thank you. Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So as you guys know, I've made quite a few Yaddle videos in the past. She's one of my all-time favourite Jedi, and besides being a really underrated one, she was one of the most mysterious members of the Jedi Council before she left between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. And in case you missed it, I made an entire video speculating on the reasons that she left. Now, in Star Wars Legends, we know what happened to her. She died on the mission to Mawan, saving Anakin Skywalker. But in canon, her story was never completed. But one fascinating aspect of Yaddle that does not get enough attention are her lightsabers, specifically her second lightsaber, the orange one. While Yaddle is well known for wielding a green blade, after having been anointed as a Jedi Master following a 2-century imprisonment, she constructed a second one, which, as I said, had an orange blade, one of the rarest colours of Kyber Crystal that ever existed. Now, before we talk about how and why Yaddle ended up with this crystal, we first need to speak about the importance of this colour of lightsaber and their rarity. You see, orange lightsabers have long existed in Star Wars Legends, but this rare weapon has only been recognised twice in Star Wars canon, once in Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, and the other more recent appearance was in Jedi Fallen Order. Now, very little is known officially about the symbolism of the orange Kyber Crystal, but there are various explanations in Star Wars Legends. Despite possessing an exceptional connection with the Force, those who wield orange lightsabers are adamant about rarely using them, especially in combat. Even if they were forced to resort to violence, they would first try to negotiate, and this is very much true of someone like Yaddle, who during her time on the Council only used her orange blade 3 times. Now, this in my opinion is the most plausible explanation for why we don't see many orange lightsabers in canon. Those who own them have made a pact with themselves not to commit violence until it's absolutely necessary. And as a result, it is appropriately seen as a sign of compassion, diplomacy, generosity, and a desire for a peaceful resolution, something which even the recent LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker game reinforces about Yaddle's character. Although I will say in that game, she does wield her green blade. Now, this theory would mean to some extent the orange lightsaber represents pacifism. Another theory, on the other hand, states that it was used by Sith in the early days, but that practice has since been abandoned. Connected to this is a third theory that orange lightsabers contain a partially purified red Kyber crystal, which still contains traces of its original redness, and some say that it could mean that a Jedi user who wields an orange blade had a brush with the dark side in their past. One final theory is that orange lightsabers represent a character with a void inside of them, doomed to never be filled. A rather ominous theory, but whatever the correct one is, we're going to have to wait for it, because the current canon doesn't really tell us much. But fascinatingly enough, in the case of Yaddle, all of the above kind of apply. She was a compassionate Jedi who meditated deeply on the will of the Force. That's what mattered most to her. She would always try to find a peaceful, diplomatic solution before ever igniting that weapon, and she never resorted to violence. So the question is, why did she wield such a rare lightsaber colour after being made a Jedi Master? Well, the answer is because of her experience on the planet of Koba. The story titled Yaddles Tale, the one below, is a Legends comic found in Star Wars Tales issue number 5, published by Dark Horse. It released 1 year following The Phantom Menace, when there was an active push by Lucas Books at the time to flesh out these minor characters from the first prequel. Now, it's in this story that we learn a lot about Yaddle as a Jedi, her temperament, attitude, and what other Jedi Council members thought of her. The comic also details the reason that Yoda was so afraid to make her a Jedi Master when all of the other members were in agreement that she deserved it. But as you'll come to see, Yoda saw something more in her, something darker, maybe even that so-called brush with the dark side we spoke about earlier, one that contributed to a second lightsaber possessing an orange Kyber crystal. So now I'm going to break down the story, and I will say this video has been a long time in the making, so no more jibber jabber, let's begin. Our story starts on Coruscant in the Jedi Council chamber, where a meeting's been called to discuss Yaddle's promotion. An argument then breaks out, with 2 dividing opinions. Evan Peel stands up for Yaddle, saying she's passed all the tests to become a Jedi Master, whereas Yoda thinks she has too much anger, but since Yaddle is too old to stay a Padawan or a knight, he follows the rest of the council's advice. And then Master Peel recounts Yaddle's story and where she's been for the past 200 years. Remember, she's a Yoda species and they live a very long time. Over 200 years ago, the Jedi Knight Pulvin Cut was summoned to liberate the colonies from the adversary warlock, Tulak. There was a resistance movement that was supposed to help him, but they betrayed him, so he relied on the help of his young apprentice, Yaddle, who had no sooner arrived on Koba when they were first ambushed. Now Pulvin, Yaddle's master, wielded an orange blade, and we're told he was not impervious to the dark side. And unfortunately, he let revenge and anger cloud his judgment, and he paid the price when the assailants beheaded him. That's right, Yaddle watched her master being killed in front of her. Now this is the side of Yaddle that Yoda feared, because at this point she was angry, betrayed and heartbroken. Yaddle was tortured by Tulak and interrogated. He asked her when the next Jedi would come and rescue her. While imprisoned by Tulak, Yaddle did everything in her power to remain calm, to meditate on the will of the Force, and did all she could to not give in to that anger. Another prisoner tells Yaddle that Tulak has taken to another world, he's done with this one and enslaved all of the people, but before assuming she was free, she was told that she'd be permanently interred into an underground pit for all eternity. Yaddle's confinement underground was torturous. Over time, Tulak forgot about her, and locally on Koba, she had become part of the local folklore, known as the One Below. Her wardens provided food and water for some time, but showed little mercy beyond that. Tulak had plundered the planet so thoroughly that the civilization had reverted to such a primitive state. The business of survival became so brutal that Yaddle the prisoner was forgotten. And this is where Evan Peel and Master Windu believe Yaddle achieved unity with the Force because she passed all of the tests of anger and fear. A century now passed and there were legends of the One Below, and during this time, Yaddle even taught herself the art of combat, defending herself against big animals and predators. Her survival demanded it. But she never let that combat affect her mindset. She trusted in the Force and her mind became more mature by the day. Decades passed, escape was impossible, and Yaddle came to peace with herself when fate stepped in and commuted her sentence. Massive tectonic shifts in the planet's mantle had begun to cause powerful quakes worldwide. The impoverished population was ill-prepared to deal with this season of disaster and watched helplessly as the sparse remains of their once glorious world came crashing down around their ears. Yaddle's cave above her opened up, and she emerged from the prison. Her relief was short-lived though, because once her eyes had adjusted to the daylight, Yaddle saw misery and destruction all around her, and whatever the famine and plague had not completely decimated over the ages, these new quakes had. Now what she didn't realise, that came to her such a good surprise, is that the previous generations had forgiven her. She became so ingrained in the folklore that the legend of the One Below went from a negative to an absolute local treasure, and she proved her value when she helped the local Kobans wherever she could. Eventually, as the Kobans struggled to restore their society, Yaddle did not flee. She chose to remain with them, but she contacted Evan Peel and he invited her back to Coruscant to resume her training. But Yaddle refused at first, insisting that her work with the Koban citizens was unfinished. Yaddle helped them in every way to rebuild their society, technologically speaking, and also in terms of resources. She did everything she could. The true work of a Jedi. She even became a local teacher for the school kids, and she was happy to teach them in the ways of the Force, informing them about Jedi history and the traditions and celebrations of it. But one day, Tulak's eldest son Kalut came to Koba to terrorize the planet. He wanted what he called his inheritance, but everyone stood behind Yaddle as she stood her ground bravely and fought him one-on-one. She liberated her people once and for all, finishing the work of her master Pulvin. She was then anointed a Jedi Master back on Coruscant, and then constructed herself a new lightsaber, this one wielding an orange blade. And as I said, there are many theories why it could have been orange. Some say that just like her master Pulvin Cut, she had a natural affinity and leaning towards fear. And due to her brush with anger in the past that she did overcome, maybe that's the reason why the blade was the colour it was. But in either case, her saber was considered one of the rarest on the Jedi Council. So that is the story, my dear friends. Let me know your thoughts of it in the comments down below. Now, I do want to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons who help to support what I do. If you want to become a patron and support what I do here while also getting access to hundreds of videos that are not found here on YouTube, then click the link down below. But with that said, my dear Megalorians, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you always. I'm Star Wars Meg. Have a good one.